You're listening to Eddie Andelman's Sports Talk on WHDH.
More bucks. But I think he made a mistake, and I don't know how you two guys feel, because his agent, Robert Fraley, made a move on Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
And he offered Parcells services. Now, isn't that reverse tampering, or what would you call that?
Well, I wouldn't say so. When you have an agent in pro football, especially in a situation where there's a coach involved, there's many coaches who are in a position of power, but they have to be in a position of power by winning a Super Bowl, have always been approached about upping their salaries after the Super Bowl. Bill Walsh is a prime example, threatened to quit, if you remember, Jim, a few years ago, and now he's the highest paid coach in pro football because
Raymond Berry
he uses
last year.
leverage.
He got a whole new contract after going to the Super Bowl last year.
And don't forget...
But I don't think he threatened to quit.
No,
he didn't threaten to quit, but they took care of
him. He didn't try to make a move to another team.
But there had been other people who had contacted the Sullivans about Berry.
him.
That's when they decided, well, we better give him a long-term deal and tie him up for a while.
I see nothing wrong with Parcells using this
his agent,
kind of leverage. Because his agents are free to do that. The thing is, that don't forget, a few years ago, Don Shula or someone was going to take his job. Who was it? Schnellenberger. They were going to try to get Parcells out of there. And he knows how tenuous it is. I mean, he's a hero. He's a genius today and a bum tomorrow, and especially in New York. And I see nothing wrong with him trying to up his $300,000 salary to $600,000.
Yeah, the agent was the one who called the Giants, and then when they told him no, then he went to Rozelle, and Rozelle told him no, and then that's where it ended. But it wasn't so much the Falcons who would talk to him without speaking to the Giants. That's where the tampering comes in.
Now, one or two other questions for the experts. Are the Patriots interested in moving Irving Fryar to Indianapolis, let's say for Chris Hinton? How is that going to work?
No, I know that I talked with Ron Meyer at the Super Bowl, and I asked him that because I thought it would be a made-to-order deal. Hinton wasn't happy there. Fryar's not happy here. He's not the Raymond Berry kind of guy at wide receiver. But Meyer said, no, there's no way they would trade Hinton. I think the one that Meyer wants is Stephen Starring.
Right.
He thinks he can get him for a lot less than he could get Fryar, and he thinks Starring could be as good as Fryar as a receiver.
The trouble you have there is anytime you make a trade within your division, it always comes back to haunt you. So the chances of just all things being equal, a trade being made in the first place in your division is somewhat limited. But the fact is you're going to trade with Ron Meyer with the Patriots, that's even limits it even more. So I would think it's pretty dubious. But as far as a trade is concerned, in any kind of trade involving a wide receiver or possibly defensive players and offensive players, I think that's a distinct possibility this year more than any other year. I think you're going to see more trades in the NFL this year than you have in the last 5 years because there are certain teams that are in such dire need of upping themselves and bettering themselves. I'm thinking of San Diego, places like that. You have quarterbacks that are going to be available, like Steve Young. Not that you're going to get in a bidding war situation, but I think you're going to see some situations like that. So you're going to see more trades than ever before in the NFL. And the Patriots could be involved in them.
What about the Bears looking for another quarterback and showing some interest in Grogan?
That doesn't surprise me. The other day, McCarthy said that he's looking to draft a quarterback. Now, he's going to corner the market on quarterbacks, but do they have one that can carry them back to the Super Bowl? McMahon certainly has proved he can, but he's got physical ailments. Flutie had to go through all the pressure of rebounding when he had to rebound in the playoffs. To my way of thinking, that's a brilliant move on the part of McCaskey if they could get a Grogan. I think that would be a terrible mistake on the part of the Patriots.
Well, how long would Grogan last as a starting quarterback?
I think he could last as long as any other quarterback. I don't think he has any infirmity that he can't physically play the game other than the normal sets of injuries. Look at McMahon, and they have a terrific offensive line.
But he's a lot younger. McMahon.
Well, he is a lot younger. But
Tony Easton's been hurt as often as Grogan has the last 2 years.
Sure.
He got carried off the field twice in the last 2 years, the same as Grogan did. It all depends. That accident against the Jets last year when Grogan got hurt, the guy rolls over and breaks his leg. That's not an accident-prone guy. That's just something that happened. It could happen to any of the
There's no question in my mind if the Bears were able to make a deal like that for Grogan, they would be a step up on the next season. But I don't think that's going to happen. I just can't. When they say a player like Grogan, there aren't many players like Grogan in the league. I mean, quite honestly, the backup quarterbacks in the league are just a real step below the starting quarterback. In the case of the Patriots, you don't have that problem.
266-1100 is our number. We'll be right back after this message.
85 HD.
266-1100 is our number. I'm Jim McCarthy, along with, got my name.
That's all there now.
I know, what are you going
Hello, my
to do?
name
You get to a
is
certain
Tex.
age, you forget things. With Ron Hobson of the Ledger and Kevin Mannix of the Boston Herald. Now, where do you hear this one, gang? We were just batting this around about Steve Grogan and McCaskey and the Bears, and, as Kevin said, many other teams take Grogan. And then Kevin said to me, why the Raiders would give up Howie Long for Grogan. Where do you get these wild subjects? And I'd like to ask our friends and the listeners, would they trade Steve Grogan, and who would they trade him for? And you just told me that the Raiders would give up.
I think that he would fit in perfectly with him, and I think that's the kind of a price that Grogan would command at this stage. And
For
Al
Howie
Davis,
Long.
Al Davis is so desperate for quarterback. He likes Rusty Hilger, but Hilger is, he's an average guy. There's nothing great about him. Plunkett is too old. Mark Wilson can't do the job. His offense is predicated on a guy who just loves to go deep. And there's nobody who throws the ball deep better than Steve Grogan.
He's the quintessential Raiders quarterback.
He's a Raider,
I agree
he's
with
a Raider
you.
guy.
Absolutely.
And I think they would give up
He's
a Howie
tough
Long.
guy. I don't think he would give up Howie Long. He's the heart and soul of the defense. They would make a deal, but it wouldn't be Howie Long.
He wasn't as happy as he might have been out there during this past year. He may not fight coming back here if a deal could be worked out. Throw in a third or fourth round draft pick too.
Just a quick baseball note, and then we'll go to the callers. The Atlanta Braves acquired second baseman Damasco Garcia and pitcher Luis Leal from the Toronto Blue Jays in exchange for pitcher Craig McMurtry. Braves general manager Bobby Cox announced today. Then it tells a little more about McMurtry. He was 27. Garcia, who's 30. Leal, who's 39. What they did last year and what it was. But that's the baseball talk right now. Maybe we can go into it more on Wednesday night. And maybe there'll be more baseball news on Wednesday night. But right now, let's go to the calls. You're first on WHDH.
How you doing, guys?
Fine, how are you?
Kevin,
Hello.
you were on your boat this weekend.
I was. Yes, I was. In fact.
Yeah, did you get a little frostbite? Howie Long for Grogan?
Yeah, I think he did.
No, I think they would do that. I honestly, if you threw in something else, what did they do with the team
now
with
there's
Howie
somebody
Long on
else
the team?
involved. If
Oh
they
yeah, he
threw
said a
in
draft
somebody
pick.
else.
Yeah, draft pick.
A draft pick now.
Sure.
Okay.
You got to throw another player in there before it becomes at all feasible.
Well, he wasn't the happiest guy in the world with the Raiders last year. He missed a number of games, and their problem is not with their defense. Their problem is with the offense. Can you imagine what they would be like with a Grogan who could make those long passes go? He'd be the perfect quarterback.
Kevin, I agree with 100%. But the fact is, they're not going to give up Howie Long in exchange for Grogan. They'd switch draft choices. They'd give him a first, I'm sure, because Al Davis has said he's given his depth chart in his quarterbacks. Rusty Hilger, who beat the Patriots and nobody else, and that's the extent of his entire career. And Plunkett is second on the draft choice, and he never even mentioned Mark Wilson during the Super Bowl. Mark Wilson's a guy making $900,000 and not
What
loved
is the
anywhere.
most important position on a football team? Quarterback.
Exactly.
He is the perfect quarterback for that system.
I agree with you.
And
100%.
Howie Long, if it would take a Howie Long and maybe the Patriots throw in a 3, I think they would do the deal.
Well,
Because Howie Long had surgery this year. He missed a few games. I think they would do it. I would if I was them.
Caller, what are we going to do with Kevin? I mean, now he thinks that we're going to get Howie Long for Grogan, and the next thing he'll be announcing, I'd say by May 1st that he's moving to Hingham.
right by the harbor.
Yeah, right.
Can I tell you why the America's Cup's so big this year?
Yes.
So good or so big?
So big and getting so much ink and getting so much television.
That's it, television.
It's getting, it gets on the networks every night. The 7 o'clock news. It usually leads off.
Well, everybody that can afford a television can afford a boat. It's that simple.
This is true. The loss in '83, the fact that Dennis Corners is from the West Coast, and people out there now have an interest in it, and they can put it on TV and show it around out in the West Coast. The fact that it's right after the Super Bowl. There's really nothing to talk about after the Super Bowl. It's something that's going on, and it's something that we're going to bring back to America. If it was in Newport again this year, it'd just be another lull. You'd hear about it and forget about it by April.
Exactly.
Wouldn't even know it existed. But now that it's in Australia, the best thing for the America's Cup that could ever have been is that Dennis Connor's lost it and is going to win it back.
Have you been watching it this year?
I don't really. If I'm up at 11:30, I watch the start, but it's a joke because after 10 minutes I'm bored. and I turn and that's it, and I read the next day who won.
I like to read about the parties.
Yeah, that's pretty.
I mean, I like to, then I put myself right in that position. I'm sitting at the dock in Fremantle and having a good time and, you know, talking with my friends, just like the party.
Yeah.
Guys, can I ask you something? I'm Kevin,
Yes.
and I'd like to ask you, if you were a New York baseball writer, what would your opinion be of Dwight Gooden right now? What would you want to do with him?
Oh, it's just what they're doing. Just calm the kid down. He went through a bad time. I don't know what kind of a kid he is, but from everything I've read, until this happened down in Tampa, he had been the perfect All-American boy. There's been no trouble with him. He's been making a lot of appearances for the Mets.
Kevin, I mean, you've been on the boat way too long.
Well, I don't. Well, what else did he do?
He didn't even make the World Series parade. He was so hungover that day.
Well, that's acceptable. What happened to the guys from the Red Sox who showed up on Channel 4 feeling no pain?
Yeah, he's had so much trouble lately.
Red Sox?
No, I mean until this year. I'm talking about before this year.
Have you heard about his girlfriend?
No, we don't want to know either.
He got arrested last.
But thanks very much for the call. 266-1100 and you're next on WHDH.
Thank you for cutting that guy off.
Well, I get worried. I want to save something for Eddie.
Yeah, well, the other night, I real late at night, the New York sports talk shows, they have those, they're out there too in New York too. I couldn't believe some of the things people say out there.
Yeah, well, that's New York, you know what I mean? We're a little more sophisticated here.
So it's not, we didn't corner the market. Hi, Ron.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Excellent.
Good. Kevin.
Yes, sir.
You noted that San Diego wants the second pick.
Yes.
I hope they don't get it. I don't want to see. I would love to see Cornelius Bennett play for Ron Meyer. He is a pass rush. You agree with that?
Absolutely.
And he's like Andre Tippett, where he makes a pass rush for you, just him being there.
You know, it's funny because when I talked to Meyer at the Super Bowl, he said he doesn't rule out the fact that Perkins would just trade with him, and Perkins would move down and then take Bennett and pass over Testaverde.
That wouldn't surprise me.
It would. It stunned me because.
Explain that again.
Yeah.
Well, right now you've got Tampa Bay as the first pick.
Okay.
Ray Perkins is the coach at Tampa Bay.
Gotcha.
Ron Meyer has the second pick in Indianapolis.
Gotcha.
He was talking about that he wouldn't rule out the fact that Perkins would be willing to exchange places with the Colts in exchange for maybe a 2 or a player, and then let Meyer take Testaverde, and then he would take Cornelius Bennett. That's how much Perkins likes.
But the problem you have there, Kevin, is the backlash you'd have in Tampa. There's a franchise that lost fans. That was one of the best franchises in the world.
They were already down to nothing.
Perkins
He
wouldn't
feels
care.
he can do it with
I
the
will
others.
agree. It's Perkins' philosophy is defense. Even though he's an offensive-minded guy, he knows to win in the National Football League, you have to have defense. Cornelius Bennett would help them. They have a lot of problems on defense.
Yeah.
They have quarterbacks in Young, who is coveted by a number of other coaches, so obviously he has enough talent, or some kind of talent, so you could get by, and I could understand that whole scenario. The problem being that the backlash from the fans there, they used to bang out the place of 60,000 people. They were getting 30, 40,000 last year, which is bad for that franchise.
They need a star.
They have to have a star. They've never really had a star other than Selman.
But I agree with
I
you
need a
that
star, an offensive star.
Yeah.
I think it would be if Meyer ever gets Bennett, in addition to the
He will.
Donnell Thompson, and you got Barry Krause, and you got some of these other guys, that's a good team. And
Cook's still there.
Cooks is still there. He was hurt a little bit toward last year, but at the last few games when Meyer came in, they said he played his best football of his career.
Caller, hang on for just a second because I want to ask this question of the boys. What did Meyer do to them in Indianapolis to get them so hyped up?
He got his quarterback back healthy the week he arrived. That's what
He had been healthy for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, but he was able to play.
Rod Dowhauer did not want to activate him. He was going to run out the season with Jack Trudeau because he felt Trudeau had been doing a pretty good job. Meyer came in. He said, "We can't ruin Trudeau. I got to get a veteran quarterback." And he went up to Hogaboom. The first day he was in Indianapolis, he says, "How are you feeling?" He says, "Fine. I've been throwing for a couple of weeks. I've got no problems." He said, "Could you go this week?" And Hogaboom said, "Yes, if the doctors say so." Meyer had him examined and activated. That, plus he realigned his offensive line. You remember when he was here, he loved that power football behind Hanna and Brock and Wooten. But what he did, he rearranged the offensive line and put Hinton at left guard, and next to Donaldson at center, and then Solt on the right guard, and then they ran Randy McMillan and they ran Albert Bentley up the middle. And that's the way they won their last 3 games. They didn't fool around. They just played
Meyer
power
inherited
football.
a very good team. I mean, for a bad team, they were good. You know what I'm saying?
It was not 0-13.
No,
it was like the
0-13.
Patriots that you inherited here. That was 2-14, but it wasn't a 2-14 team. It was a team that had won 10 games, 9 games, 10 games the previous 3 years. They just had one of those god-awful seasons. The Colts went through the same thing, and Meyer is in a very good situation because I think he has really eliminated the ghost that haunted him here. He sat down with these guys at the beginning. He said, forget what you heard about me in New England. That's past. Judge me on what you see and how I treat you. And the players all said that they couldn't believe all the stories he had heard. They said he was a terrific guy to deal with.
Well, I remember when he was here, one of the big raps against him, at least the players' rap against him, was that he had a bunch of college coaches with him, and they're pros, and what are they listening to college coaches for?
That was a big problem. That really started him off on the wrong foot here.
What happened? What is the situation out there?
He's kept his whole staff.
He just hired
one guy left to go coach, I think, in Kansas City,
right.
And he hired the former coach at Purdue to coach the running
guy
back.
he was going to replace at Purdue. The coach who got fired at Purdue, and he came into town to take that job. Well, he took the Colts job instead over the weekend. He hired that guy as one of his assistants, which I thought, what was the comment he made, Kevin, when we saw him out there that Saturday about, I hired the guy I really took, he thought that was a great coup that he hired the guy.
Was it my imagination, because I ran into him a couple of times down at Foxborough, and I thought that he was 2 different personalities. I thought he was a very low-key, not laid back, but I thought he was sort of intense, and not the personality you read about as Eddie, the good old boy type. I think he came off to the players one way, and then when he withdrew, he was a different person.
He was very much so. He had a public persona where he tried to come up with all these cliches. Yeah. He was as nice a guy you want to meet, sitting down with him one-on-one. Yeah. If you said, what's going on, he'd explain things, and, to until you understood everything, he'd just shoot the bull with you. He was a nice guy to deal with. He'd get him in a press conference or in a group setting where he had to exert some authority. He really kind of tightened up, and it really wasn't the real Ron Meyer.
No, it was that motivation type, the motivational speech type, and as you said, with the cliches, and he get up,
pro football players can see through that very quickly.
Yeah.
And he had that. He had no basis, no background to draw on. He came into pro football as a college guy with a college
Ron, Hannah and them guys didn't like him before they knew what he looked like.
Right.
Oh, I agree with you.
He came in here he had 2 strikes on him before he even came in here.
That's right.
Because he was a college guy who hired a college staff.
And he listened to what the Sullivans had to tell him when he got here, and
about
that didn't help
discipline.
either.
Yeah.
Well, what he did, he admitted to me at the Super Bowl, the biggest problem he made was not getting the power that Raymond Berry has. Raymond Berry has veto power over the draft. He's got say on what kind of deals get made, and Meyer never had that kind of control, and he always had that sword of Damocles hanging over him, that if he took that one more step, then he gets axed, and that's exactly what happened.
Also, Kevin, if he had the power, I don't know if he misused it or not either. I know that you're a big, you like the guy, and I do too. I like him very much personally. But he had some ideas that just didn't make any sense. Getting rid of Stanley Morgan was one.
Yeah.
That was a reservation.
But Stanley Morgan was
at the time. Because he was at the time because of his personality with the guy, and he did have some injuries first time in his career. But he wanted to get Earl Campbell. I mean, that would have been one of the worst disasters of all time. Earl Campbell was over the hill. He was a guy that had
Stanley Morgan had never done anything though. He figured that he'd get Campbell for 2 years, then use those 2 years and draft the big fullback and play the kind of ball that the Colts were. Carly, what do you think? Do you think the Colts are going to be a good club this year?
Yes, I do. You know why? Because everybody in the AFC East has to play the Giants, Dallas, Washington, but the Colts don't have to play those teams. The only team they play in the division is St. Louis, and they play them home and away.
Oh, is that right?
They get the 2, like Patriots at Seattle a few years ago, where they played them twice.
That's a big step up.
Yeah, so they're going to stock all those teams. They're going to stock all those boards that the Jets and the Miamis and the Patriots have to face, and they play the Houstons and all those teams. And I think he's going to have a solid team right off the go. Kevin, I want to ask you about the weight program Ron Meyer installed here when he got here, which they had none when he showed up. And I want to know what happened to that weight program when he left, because these guys look like they ran out of gas on the line of scrimmage come the end of the year this year.
What happened? They changed the whole emphasis. Meyer was on power, and Berry's guy emphasized the speed. And I think that really hurt the offensive line. They were quicker, but they just didn't have any strength.
In the defensive line,
Same thing exactly.
they became butter. All right, guys, I know that somebody else wants to talk.
Take
See you
care.
later.
Thank you.
266-1100 and you're next on WHDH.
I was wondering if you could perhaps give a quick update to the Bill Parcells Atlanta Falcons situation. I'm going to hang up and listen to your response.
I guess it's over at this stage. He still has 2 years left. The Giants had told him that they would renegotiate his deal, give him a big raise because of the job that he did this year if he extended it for a couple of years. In the meantime, you've got Atlanta, who has been stiffed by Vermeil and Donahue and any number of other people whose names have not come out.
They haven't got a complex. They will have one.
Oh, they certainly will have one now.
You know, throw Ron Erhardt's name in that Atlanta possibility. He would like to have the head coach.
Oh, I'd love it, yeah.
And I think this is another example. Ron Erhardt, you know, I happen to like very much.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody likes him.
I think he had a bad situation with the Patriots because of the situation he was in. He wanted the job. Anytime you want the job,
yeah, but he created his own bad situation.
I agree. He wasn't firm enough, or definitive about certain things, and he knew that the ship was sinking underneath him because he didn't have, as he said before the Super Bowl, if Dick Steinberg was there a year earlier, he would still be the coach, because Steinberg would have got him the players he needed, which were defensive players. It was a terrible defensive team, and they exposed all the defensive weaknesses in 1981. In the preseason, they exposed them against Seattle, and it was from that point on he had no chance to win without defense. But I think he's learned a lot in the 5 years he's been with the Giants. Look what he did. They got that Super Bowl syndrome thing about assistant coaches, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators that go on, like Buddy Ryan did last year, and proved that he wasn't quite the genius that everyone thought he was. But I think Ron Erhardt proved in the Super Bowl just how good of an offensive coordinator he is in the way he prepared for a big game. And I think Atlanta would be foolish not to consider him seriously.
Yeah, I think the thing that he's a great offensive coordinator. The way he picks apart a defense. You saw what he did here. You know, when he had Don Calhoun as his chief running back, that team averaged 30 points a game or 28 points a game. Right. He's a great offensive coach. Does he have the temperament to discipline a team, to handle a team like a Ditka can, or like a Berry can in a very different way, or a Landry? He didn't show it in the 3 years here because he inherited a team. I remember sitting down with him the day he got the job, or before his first training camp, and he said, I inherited a playoff team. It's my job to get him to the Super Bowl, and I understand that. And he never got to the playoffs the next 3 years, and his final year was 2-14. A lot of that was you talk to players now who are objective about it, and the players love the guy because he's legitimately a nice fellow. But what he did, he just would turn his back on a lot of things that were going on. Guys would stiff him, and even Hannah, who was Erhardt's best friend, just about, he really liked the guy. He said that the players just took advantage of Erhardt.
But is that a case of nice guys not winning pennants?
It might be in that situation, or maybe he's learned enough. You know, it looked like Meyer was a dead duck too. He got a second chance. And Erhardt, just from the way he's built up that offense with the Giants, and you look at that offense, they've got free agents in the front line. Brad Benson, the Pro Bowler, got cut from the Patriots. They've got a bunch of guys that just were built into a good team, and he's got an excellent offensive mind.
266-1100 is our number, and we'll be right back after this message.
HDH. HDH News Time, 7:02. The main prosecution witness in the police exam scam trial may be allowed to take the stand tomorrow. Former MDC Captain Gerald Clemente wanted to testify today, but lawyers for the 7 defendants in the case objected strenuously. Lawyers say they want restrictions on what Clemente can and cannot say as a prosecution witness. Testimony in that case resumes tomorrow. Senator Ted Kennedy says businesses should be required to provide minimum medical insurance for workers, just as they're required to pay a minimum wage. Kennedy, head of the Senate Labor and Human Resources Committee, today unveiled his proposal before a meeting of the American Hospital Association in Washington. To help parents cope, Boston City Hospital says it'll open a special ward for children with AIDS. Officials at BCH say 18 youngsters were diagnosed as having AIDS in 1981. Today, only 5 of them are still alive. The Salisbury man will be spending the rest of his life behind bars. Following his first-degree murder conviction this afternoon, Robert Maskell was charged with killing his neighbor, Warren Sargent, also of Salisbury. The two got into an argument over a dog last April. Maskell convicted in Newbury Superior Court, sentenced to MCI Cedar Junction. HD8 Sports, the annual Bean Pop underway at the Garden. Harvard and Northeastern in the opening game, later BU and BC. The Bruins and the Celtics have the night off. On Wall Street, Dow Industrials closing at 2179.42, up 21.38. Now, Channel 7 meteorologist Todd Gross with a complete HDH forecast.
Mostly clear skies tonight with low temperatures 30 to 35 in the city, 20s in the suburbs. Tomorrow there'll be cloudy skies with a chance of a passing rain or snow shower, highs in the 30s to near 40. Tomorrow night, again, just a chance of a flurry, temperatures down in the 20s, no big deal. And as we move to Wednesday, we'll have mostly sunny skies, a partly sunny day, and high temperatures in the 30s. That's my latest HDH forecast.
Thank you, Todd. 45 degrees in Copley Square. If someone you love's having a heart attack, would you know what to do? The American Red Cross Life-Saving Peace CPR course can mean the difference between life and death. Call the Red Cross. Their number 262-1234. HDH News Time, 7:05. I'm Listo Fisher, WHDH News.
Back, I'm Jim McCarthy, along with Kevin Mannix of the Herald and Ron Hobson of the Patriot Ledger. 266-1100 is our number. And there is just a quick note that Nevada, Las Vegas is #1 in college basketball. And we mentioned it yesterday, Ron Borges had a nice article on the Jerry Tarkanian in the Globe. So they are #1. What more can I say? North Carolina lost to Notre Dame yesterday. And I didn't see the game. So we have a caller in the line. Go ahead, caller. Hello.
Hi, Jimmy. How you doing?
Good.
A new caller, Jim.
Oh, where's the old one?
I don't know.
He ran out of his speech ended.
You know, there's a rumor out of Fremantle today. You know, the Austrians are wondering why their boat had slowed up going downwind on the last leg. They had really picked up. Further investigation found there was a rope from the stern with a man hanging on, and was found out that Steve Moore was connected to that rope.
No wonder they didn't move.
Yeah. This guy is good.
Steve was just trying, they said, to put his leg in water. The house. Hey, Kevin.
Yes.
Now, if Howie Long does come here, will he, when he comes off from the defense, will he put the headset on immediately when he gets to the sideline?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you know, we'll leave someone take over the offensive coordinating with Steve.
No, you know, it's all right. Berry can make the calls, or Eason. I'm just saying, if I am the Raiders, I would make that deal. If I'm the Patriots, I don't make the deal because Grogan is as good a quarterback as there is in the NFL right now. He's just not getting a chance.
Okay, on a serious note, Kevin.
I was serious. If I'm Al Davis, I make that deal.
All right. Ron and Kevin, what is the situation with the Atlanta Falcons? Nobody wants that job. Last year, at the beginning of the season, they were really, you know, they had an aggressive defensive team. I mean, we remember them coming in with 3 wins in a row. They were a good team. They had strong offensive line, Fralick, Gerald Riggs. I mean, what is wrong with that team?
I think what happened, they had assumed. They didn't let Henning go until they had talked to 2 people and had talked to Vermeil. And they had been led to believe that Vermeil was going to take the job. He had second thoughts about it, but he said Terry Donahue would take the job. That's when the Falcons played Chuck Sullivan, and they tried to lowball Donahue. If they had given him an extra $100,000 a year over 5 years, Donahue, from what I understand from when I was out at the Super Bowl, he would have gone to the Falcons, and they had no problems. Instead, they tried to lowball him a little bit, and he had too much to lose by leaving UCLA. So he said, okay, forget about it. I don't want it either. Now they're just swinging in the breeze. And I have a feeling that what they're going to do is give the job to Marion Campbell on an interim basis for this coming year, and then start over again next year.
That would be foolhardy. I mean, that's typical of what that team has done, and that's what I mean. Where they've been all these years, and they're nowhere.
You heard the one that I heard, that they were going to offer the job back to Henning.
Yeah.
You know,
before he went to Washington.
It's ridiculous.
You know, like 5 or 6 years ago, it's been a long time. The strength of the Patriots, they've always had great, outside receivers. Strength is still the receiving core. However, right now, you have guys like Cedric Jones, Drew Williams, who are really good receivers, who are going to waste away. They're in their prime right now. It's got to be bait right there, those 2 guys.
Well,
but you're not going to get anything for them. You know, they haven't done anything. Look at this year, Derwin Williams had 2 catches, and Cedric Jones might have had 12 or 13. Starring, I think, had 15 catches. So for all their talent outside, they're not really throwing to him a lot.
Only because they went to Morgan so much.
Well, they went to the other guys too, but they weren't getting to the ball as well as Stanley Morgan was.
Yeah, I don't think Darren Williams is a long-term success. I don't think he showed anything this year. There are a couple of things I saw him do that I wouldn't like to see him do on a regular basis, any receiver do. I don't think he's any long-term answer. They certainly won't get anybody for him.
But I think when you look at I think that is a strength. When you've got Morgan and Fryar and Starring, those are quality wide receivers. But I think that's just another reason why Grogan should have been the quarterback.
Yeah.
Because he takes advantage of their speed by getting the ball downfield deep. Tony Eason doesn't do that. Tony Eason prefers to throw the ball to Greg Beatty or dump it off to Tony Collins. Grogan is a guy who will take advantage of the speed of Morgan and Fryar and Starring, wait for them to get open, and have defenses aware of the deep pass. With him at quarterback, the safeties have to back up and help out the cornerbacks. With Eason, we saw that this year. I think that's the main reason they weren't able to run the ball this year. With Eason, teams would stay one-on-one coverage with Morgan and Fryar and hope that if they did get beat, that Eason would miss them. They used, and plus they know that Eason doesn't go deep a lot. That then lets the two safeties come up and act as linebackers, which takes away a little bit more of the run.
But Eason can go deep.
He can.
Sure.
Not as well as Grogan goes deep as well as anybody.
Have you advised the coaching staff of this?
I have. He refuses to talk to me about it anymore. I keep after every game, I try to get into that. Why isn't Grogan playing? What did you consider bringing him in? He says, Kevin, I'm tired of talking about that.
Hey, Jimmy.
Yes.
One final thing I want to ask him. This year, we mentioned a lot about the offensive line, and a lot of excuses here with, well, Lynn Dawson's down too. I think they will be making a big mistake if they just hold pat on tight end, thinking, well, Lynn Dawson's going to come back, that's going to solve all our problems. The guy is a good blocker, but he was not well known, as a great receiver, and we don't know if he's going to recover totally. I hope they don't just, put their all, I think that's the key,
Didn't you like Greg Beatty at the end of the season?
As a receiver.
Even as a blocker.
I mean, the guy was a rookie. I thought he did. I don't know how you felt about it, Caller, but he was a rookie. He came in, he learned the hard way, and I thought he did pretty. He's got the size for sure.
Beatty is the tight end of this team for the next 5 years, without a doubt. He's got everything going for him, particularly in the cerebellum.
How about Mannix?
That's key.
Will Mannix finally replace Brock at his supposedly right position center?
Well, he had the shot to do it this year, and they went into the last preseason game, and they both knew whoever played better would start the first game against Indianapolis. And Mannix had his worst game of the preseason. Brock had his best game. Brock then won the job and stayed healthy. Once with Berry, if you start the season and you stay healthy, 99 times out of 100, you're going to keep that job.
Exactly.
Witness Pete Brock, witness Toby Williams.
That's the way we did it with Baltimore.
Okay, Jim, thanks.
Okay, kid. 266-1100 is our number. What are they going to do with Ken Sims?
That's a good question. What's Ken Sims going to do with Ken Sims?
I have no idea.
He had
I know he did a lot of talking. We talked about it last night. Is he good? Well, listen, that's great. I'd love to see Ken down there. You could give us some pointers. I could probably get him in shape for one thing.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you something. It's going to take. He's had a major back surgery, disc, and for him to come back, last year he came back out of shape, and that compounded his problem of his injury developing. And I've seen nothing in him other than that 9-10 game series a year ago.
That's right.
That he's ever played anything close to a first-round draft choice. And I would say it's a bonus. If he comes back, it's a bonus. If not, draft defensive lineman. I mean, there's no question in my mind this team has to draft defensive lineman.
The strange thing about Ken Sims was, and we mentioned this last night, and maybe this is the third time it's been mentioned over the past year, but we were out in Las Vegas to the fight. And we were doing the show from out there.
I remember.
With Hagler. And Ken Sims was on the show. And Moore was on the show. Ken Sims was going to renegotiate his contract. I said, renegotiate for what? He said, well, I had 13, I had the great season. I said, hey, you've been here for 3 or 4 years, at least 3 years, and you had 13 good games, and you're going to go in and tell him you want to renegotiate? You got to be crazy. He thought I was a little crazy.
Well, he made a little mistake in not knowing that he didn't have a year to negotiate with, because he, unknown to him, he had another year to go on his contract he didn't know about. And it was option year, and that's what fouled him up. And he was in no position whatsoever to renegotiate.
You know what the problem with all of these people, not all of them, I take that back, many of them, is they're always worrying about the other guy. He was in the company of the defensive end from the Bears. Who's the
Richard Dent?
Richard Dent. Dent was on the show that night. And Dent was going to hold out for $900,000. Now Sims hears all this, and they're hanging around together, and they get ideas of grandeur because one gets it. I deserve it. Look, they're all whistling Dixie, in my opinion.
Of course. The Pro Bowl was a famous enclave for the players to trade salaries before salaries became public knowledge through the NFL Players Association. They give that information out now. But in the old days, guys would, an offensive lineman making $100,000 would get together in the Pro Bowl for a week with some guy from the Minnesota Vikings just got off the Super Bowl, and he's getting $300,000, and they go berserk. And they trade information, and that's what caused holdouts. It's pretty much common. Everyone knows what the other guy's making.
Before we take another call, I just want to change up for a second and go back to the 5 signings that the Red Sox had, who were Schiraldi, Mark Sullivan, Mitch Johnson, Curry, and Manzanillo. Mark Sullivan was the one that interests me. They all signed one-year contracts, which means the old man isn't saying, "Hey, Mark, stick around, I'll take care of you." 1 year. To me, that's the way it should be.
That's the way.
Here's some incentive.
Jimmy, the one-year contract was the way baseball was for years.
Sure.
The multi-year contract is ruined professional sports.
Absolutely.
That is what's ruined. That's why you have all these crying and whining about players making, "Gee, I can't make $900,000. I'm going to leave." Who cares?
That's right.
It's
You're
boring.
right.
I don't care about what players make anymore.
That's right.
The one-year contract is the best deal. Then the players will say, "Well, we were taking over the Colts for 35 years because we only had one-year contract."
They weren't even alive when they were taking over
the multi-year contract has been one of the biggest downfalls, one of the causes why professional sports in general is in the state it is in. There's no question in my mind.
Okay, and then I wanted to mention quickly that 20% of the NFL players will become free agents on February 1st. I don't really care, but let me just tell you who some of them are. Walter Payton, Jimbo Colbert, Anthony Munoz, Danny White, Henry Ellard, Craig James. Craig's going to be free agent. Okay, Craig, good luck. Kurt Warner, Dave Craig, Joe Jacoby, Lionel Manuel. There's a whole list of them. There's 357. I'm not going to read them all. But the fact is, what is the situation with the free agents?
That means nothing. It's a meaningless list.
It just means that their contract expired. They're going to redo a new one. Nobody's going to move anywhere. They're all going to sign with the same teams that they played for last year, or else they'll be out of football.
What do they sign for? What automatically? No, they don't.
10% raise.
10% raise.
10% raise.
10% raise. That's all. The free agency for football is non-existent, so it means nothing. That's just a waste of time.
So for Ken Sims, who didn't play at all last year and got $385,000, the minimum he's going to make next year is $385 plus 38.5, which is what, $412,000.
All right. Now, there's one other question I want to ask the both of you before we take another call because the lines are filled. But I have to ask this because people ask me, and I can answer it, and I think I give them the right answer. But then again, I don't hang around with the teams, with the players, with the owners, or anybody else. The television contract is split, including the Super Bowl, among the 28 teams.
That's correct.
Okay. If the Patriots go into the playoffs, what extra money do they earn?
The concessions at home.
Okay. They still have to split. If they play, let's say, Miami at Sullivan Stadium, they still have to 60-40.
60-40.
Okay. So, and if they go to the Super Bowl in New Orleans or out in L.A., 100,000 people or whatever it was, they still get 60-40 split on that. But the television, they do not get
television. No,
it's already split.
That's preordained when the contract.
Okay, that's what I thought it was. But then again, you guys live with it. I don't. 266-1100. You're next on WHDH. Hello? Hello? You're there? Hey, the shadow.
Hello?
He was there. How are you?
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you?
Fine, and you?
Good, thank you. I'd like to throw out some names of some Patriots players, and I'd like your assessment on their past year and what you think their future is going to hold for them. Johnny Rambert.
Well, he did not have a good year. He made a lot of big plays, but he missed a lot of tackles as well. He was probably as disappointing as anybody on the defense this year. He showed up at camp. I think he was about 257 pounds after having played at 230 the previous year. And it took him a long time to lose that weight. By the end of the season, he had lost most of it, but he had lost a lot of his ability to get to the play and make the tackle.
I take a different view. I think Rembert played well. I think, as Kevin mentioned, he did make some plays where he was out of position because of inexperience. The fact he just haven't played a lot. But he made some. About 4 years. Yeah, but he didn't play a lot. I mean, you could be around a team for 20 years if you don't play.
But when he first came up,
not in that position,
he was a good. When he first started to play,
yes,
he looked good.
It looked like with he and Wysoon, you had the new Sam Hunt, Steve Nelson.
Right.
It really, they really looked that good.
I mean, Jim, wasn't Rembert considered to be the heir apparent to Nelson?
I thought he was.
Still is.
Yes, still is.
I mean,
Well, actually, no,
did
because
his way out of that this year?
no, because there's nobody else there. With Nelson hurt and Wysoon hurt and Larry McGrew basically an outside linebacker, he was their best inside linebacker. But he is not the kind of guy like Nelson is in his prime, or like Wysoon was the 1 year he was healthy.
I agree.
Is he
He's
a
not
permanent
making big plays.
Is he a permanent injury?
Wysoon? It doesn't look good. His knee is fine. This year it's a series of hamstring and groin pulls.
Yeah.
And now he hasn't played in 3 years.
It's very difficult. You miss 1 year, it's tough enough.
Sure.
Your
To miss
second
3
point.
years.
Well, that's what I figured. I mean, when somebody keeps getting injured, same with Ken Sims.
Sure.
I mean, he's
I
going to
think
be
this
injured.
year-
Something's going to happen to him. He's just one of those guys. 280 pounds, 6'7". He's breakable.
You know, Rembert does have the talent to be a very, very good inside linebacker
Yeah.
because he's big and he's fast and he reacts well. I think he just did not play well for all the wrong reasons this year. He showed up out of shape, and it took him a while to get into shape, and then he just didn't really react the way he'd like to. The reason that the Jets and Denver were able to run the ball up the middle was not so much that it was Toby Williams, because he was being double-teamed.
Right.
It was that McGrew and Rembert weren't making the plays. And those are the two guys that have to make the plays on the inside.
Name number two, a gentleman who I have an unwavering negative attitude about is Mr. Holloway.
Well, Baby Huey? Yeah, no, I like you. He did, to give him his due, he played harder this year than he might have the last 2 years. He was
Well, he
banged
had
up
help.
with his knee.
He had help last year and the year before.
Talk and no play.
Well, he's not no play. He certainly talks more than he plays. And he says more words than he's going to make blocks for you. But he wasn't the cause of the problem, man. He wasn't as good as his reputation,
Right.
but he'd never been as good as his
He
reputation.
played hurt quite a few games, too.
And he was out for a
That
few
slowed him.
games.
Yeah, it did, because of the
Bad
injury.
news.
But he's not as bad as people will make him out to be. I
Nor
think
as
people have
good as
negative
people thought
effects
he
about him
was.
because of his public stance on
Yeah, right. I think so, too.
That drives people crazy.
You touched on him a minute ago, Craig James. I think for a back who takes an hour and a half to get to the line of scrimmage, you've got to find an answer somewhere else.
I couldn't figure what happened.
Yeah,
I couldn't
that's
figure out what happened to him this year.
Looks like maybe you could be the answer.
Yeah, that may be the biggest surprise of the whole year, is a guy that ran for 1,200 yards or more. It really looked like he was going to be one of the top 5-6 backs in the league. And to drop off as far as he dropped off, that's astonishing to me.
Yeah,
I mean, how much can you blame
I felt
the
the same
injuries,
way.
guys?
I don't think you can blame some of it, but not toward the end of the year. He said he was fully healthy. And he just didn't run with the same kind of style that he did the previous year. He didn't run as hard into the hole, and he didn't make I can't remember him making a player miss him. Last year, you remember, whenever he'd get going, he'd make one or two guys miss him, then he'd get 6 yards downfield and be tackled.
How much trade value does he have?
At this stage, he's more valuable to the Patriots than he would be to another team.
But he's not that big ram back. I mean,
he's a
if
210-pound guy.
That's right. If there's no hole there, Craig James is going to have a problem where we talked many times, a Zonka or an Earl Campbell, they'd get you 3 yards. That's with everything blocked.
And you mentioned having holes to run through. The situation with Bluon Johnson, the sack. Are we all in agreement that Mr. Wooten was at fault?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, he admits it
Big
himself.
mouth.
He admitted that right away.
Yeah, he admitted himself.
Yeah, but Eason took the heat. Why didn't you do this? Why? Eason was still bent over. He just got the ball. He started to move.
The line of scrimmage was the 10.
Yeah.
He was in the shotgun. And this guy's got to take 5 steps before he gets there. Eason has to sense him coming and throw the ball out of bounds. That was
Did he
not
see
his
him?
fault. He had to have seen him, sure. Guy's coming right up the middle. He beat Wooten to the inside, right over center. And he came straight down the middle, right at Eason. If he didn't see him, he certainly should have.
No, at all.
Change course for 1 second, Jim, and I'll get off. The Gedman situation.
Yes.
What's the answer?
What is the answer?
I mean,
he will be back.
A viable.
Rich Gedman will be back. I think Rich Gedman is going through a very traumatic stage right now. At least that's my opinion. If I could read human nature, because and knowing very little, only having met him once or twice, he seems like a humble kid who wants to stick around. I don't think he wants to play in Houston, Oakland, or any place else. But if he wants to go and does sign for less money, good luck. Let's get Lance Parrish.
No, thanks for the time. I appreciate it, guys.
Okay. 266-1100. We'll be right back after this message.
HDH.
Suffolk Downs, the Daily Double. The 8, AJ's Jet, and the 9, Regalina, paid $82.60. And that's it. They only raced the double today. All the other races were canceled. First 2 races, everything else kaput. 266, I hope they're back very soon. I hope tomorrow.
Track must have lost their base.
I'm sure.
Because of thaw.
We'll be right back after this message.
You're listening to Eddie Andelman's Sports Talk on WHDH. Call 266-1100 and talk sports with Eddie.
266-1100 is our number. I'm Jim McCarthy along with Kevin Mannix of the Herald and Ron Hobson of the Patriot Ledger. And earlier in the show, Kevin stated that the Raiders would take Grogan and give up Howie Long. I'm still laughing at that one. I mean, he might be right about a few things, but that one, please, Kevin. And you're next on WHDH.
Shula, Landry, Knox, Knoll.
Shula, Landry, Knox, Knoll. Tell me when your birthday comes.
No, I want to know why they fire coaches.
Oh, why they fire coaches?
After just 2 years. I tried to ask you before, but you cut me off.
Certain teams will all have a history of firing coaches after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, because they have no stability. Their ownership is generally one that they can't cope with losing, or they think it's going to be a cure-all. The Houston Oilers will always be where they are because Bud Adams is that kind of an owner. I think Atlanta will be that situation because Rankin Smith is that kind of an owner. There are certain. I think it's just part of the operation. Bidwell in St. Louis, he's just a very average owner. I think that's what you have to look at first. It's the ownership of the team that really dictates to the stability of the team, and the ones you just mentioned. Shula stays, despite his relationship with the owner. They only speak about business. They don't go to canasta card fests or anything. They're not real close. Well, they might go to poker games. I don't know. But the fact is, they learn to coexist because Joe Robbie owns Miami Dolphins, knows that Don Shula is the Miami Dolphins, and he will be successful. He certainly isn't going to rock the boat in this latest contract because he's opening up a new stadium up the street that he has invested a lot of money in, and he wants to have a good team in there, and he signed Shula to a new contract. The teams that generally do poorly as far as losing coaches and keeping coaches and hiring and firing are the teams that have poor ownership. That's basically the reason.
The one question I wanted to ask you both before we take another call is Brian Bosworth said today, he's the Oklahoma linebacker.
Brian Bosworth.
Who now he claims that if he goes hardship or leaves college, that he would have to go to Buffalo, and he doesn't want to go to Buffalo, so he thinks he'll go back to Oklahoma.
Good.
I'm just wondering if they should tell him at Oklahoma, Brian, take a walk. They've already suspended him for steroids.
Yeah.
And that brings up another question. As far as steroids are concerned, do all these guys take steroids? Do many of them take them? Do the 6 foot, 180-pound guys take them? Who exactly takes steroids?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
they don't broadcast it.
Steroids used to be.
But you can tell. You can tell a guy who was.
You can guess. Sure.
Yeah, sure. That was 6'4", 210, or 220 when he got out of college, and he's now 6'4", 275. He's taking something.
Yeah, some just mature into the size. But as far as Brian Bosworth is concerned, who cares?
Yeah,
he's a bore. He's one of the few players they invited 350.
Not like America's Cup.
This is a different kind of bore
that people.
Does he really think he's that big that makes any difference where he plays? He's just one little cog in football. He's not a big name guy. When in 5 years from now, you may never hear of Brian Bosworth. He's just fashionable because Sports Illustrated made him fashionable. Who cares if he goes to Buffalo?
I don't care.
If he goes anywhere.
But
that's the kind of
don't take it out on
That's the kind of buffoonery that really upsets me.
This is part of that whole game because he read with Wilson, and his scouts want to take Shane Conlon, the kid from Penn State. Ralph Wilson, the owner of the Bills, likes his kid Bosworth. He said he doesn't care if he wears a wig, shaves his head, and paints it pink, as long as he can play football. And now he's saying, well, this guy wants me, This is a way to play hardball. This is all contractual. It means nothing. Because isn't he supposed to be involved in the Superstars? Where he's going to get paid for competing? So now he can't go back to Oklahoma. Isn't
Conlon a better ball player than Bosworth?
Not according to the scouts. No. I thought he was. I know Steinberg likes him better. I know that much. Steinberg feels that Conlon may be the best of all the Penn State linebackers. But I talked to maybe 6 or 7 personnel guys at the Super Bowl, and 5 of them said that they like Bosworth better.
All the more reason I take the Penn State linebacker over any Oklahoma linebacker ever.
I think you can handle him better.
Of course, they're smarter. They know that they have a better foundation of what they're supposed to do. Shane Conlon won the Fiesta Bowl for his team. I want him on my team. I don't care about Brian Bosworth's haircut, about his big mouth. He's an idiot.
That's right, because as good as... I agree with you. As good as he might be for 2 or 3 or 5
Let's get Eddie on the phone. Hobby just took a stand.
He did?
He didn't vacillate. He didn't waffle. He took a stand.
There are certain things that I do not tolerate, and that's one of them. That kind of...
But haircuts?
No, that's nothing. But the players like this think they're bigger than life, and it really isn't. They're just a small little spot.
There are so many people coming out of school every year, and there are only so many
Some
jobs.
kid at Appalachian State would love to be in his position.
And he probably could make the team.
And probably, he could. I mean, if given the opportunity, but he won't get the opportunity that Brian Bosworth.
266-1100 is our number, and you're next.